Okay, this is a last minute panic about Curley video. I'll get it right this time now that I'm back from the gym. So Curley is a character included to show the problems with masculinity by Steinbeck. So he represents the violence of masculinity and the need to prove yourself in a social hierarchy by bettering your fellow man. Symbolically, this is a capitalist point of view. It's survival of the fittest. And one way of reading the novel is George illustrates that capitalist viewpoint. He survives and Lenny doesn't. In a socialist society, the welfare state would look after the weak. And the weak, as Curley's wife tells us, are Crooks, herself, and Candy and Lenny. And they all suffer through the novel. Curley doesn't suffer. He doesn't really care about his wife's death. He suffers great pain, but his social position remains the same. He's still the boss's son, he still has power, and he still has the satisfaction of seeing Lenny killed. And one senses that his satisfaction at that is greater than his memory or his misery at his wife's death. He's crucial to the novel, as we see in the final 2 lines when Carlson says, "Now what the hell you suppose is eating them 2 guys?" And it's Curley speaking to, and Curley can't understand it. He shares the same view as Carlson, that same extreme masculine view that respects only violence and force. Steinbeck also uses Curley to show how that kind of masculinity is actually all a front. It's not real. It's disguising fear. Just as Curley's wife says, when she gets any man on their own, they're perfectly nice to her, but as soon as they're in company, they're all scared of each other. Curley epitomizes this fear. This perhaps is what attracts him to boxing in order to prove himself. That's why he's entered the Golden Gloves and done so well. And normally we'd expect somebody who's succeeded in boxing, a skillful and manly sport, to be much admired in the novel. But Steinbeck is attacking this view of masculinity, and consequently he makes the boxer, Curley, the least likeable character perhaps in the novel. So he uses Curley to attack machismo, to attack masculinity, and through that to attack the patriarchal society. He also uses Curley to attack the way men treat women. This is symbolised quite clearly by Curley's glove full of Vaseline. Now, this is a complicated symbol because conceivably this could be quite a romantic gesture. If Curley wore gloves in order not to have calloused hands, so that his wife would not have to suffer a rough touch from his hands, that in itself would be quite a romantic thing to do. We could even respect him for using Vaseline to try and keep his hands relatively soft despite his manual work. However, the problem is that Curley's not really interested in being romantic with his wife at all. He's using it as a symbol for the other men. It's a symbol of the fact that he has a wife, a sexually desirable one, and the glove full of Vaseline is not something that is entirely secret. It's something that he's deliberately broadcast to advertise to the other men that he's going to sexually satisfy his wife. They, of course, have no respect for him for this, as well as for his wife. Steinbeck could be suggesting that it's Curley's desire to treat his wife as a sexual object that leads to the lack of respect he receives from other men. In other words, Steinbeck is trying to make a wider point about society. Men who treat women as sexual objects themselves should not be respected, and from this we can infer that he thinks women should be treated as individuals and human beings, not as different due to their sexuality. If Curley represents the typical male or masculine impulse, then Steinbeck is very critical of men. He deliberately makes Curley small in order perhaps to contrast the outward projection that men use in society, projecting strength and dominance, and saying that actually that hides a much smaller personality. Slim, for example, is contrasted to him. He is tall and godlike because he has no need to prove himself. Nor is he violent towards the other men, and nor does he try to compete with them in order to assert his authority or superiority. So Slim is Curley's antithesis, a vision of what masculinity could be. Curley's macho posturing is in fact just a front, and he is revealed as a coward when he confronts Slim and Slim does not back down. Similarly, Carlson confronts him and Curley is forced to back down, thereby turning on Lenny and attacking him because he feels that Lenny is too simple, too backward to fight back. Curley's tragedy is that he cannot see himself as Steinbeck sees him, or indeed as the other characters in the novel see him. By the end of the novel, he is completely unchanged. If we take this one further step beyond the novel, which is written in 1937, we might surmise that Steinbeck is looking across to Europe and the rise to Hitler, and seeing this propensity for violence and destruction as incredibly dangerous, but also as typically male. It's a characteristic that is shared by Carlson, which is why Steinbeck gives Carlson the Nazi weapon, a Luger, and why Carlson is associated so closely with Curley at the end of the novel. So if you're feeling really bold, you can make the connection between the violence of mice and men and this growing sense of doom that war is inevitable in Europe and that America will be dragged into it. So good luck in tomorrow's exam, and I hope these brief videos help. Give them a thumbs up if they have.